Hi, so welcome once again. My name is Dr. Nick Longridge. I'm a paleontologist and evolutionary biologist. Today I'm going to talk about Coahuilasaurus, a new duckbill dinosaur species from Mexico. So, my colleagues and I have recently described a new duckbill dinosaur species from the state of Coahuila in northern Mexico. We discovered it. It was not a new find in the sense that the skull has been known for a couple of decades now. It's been sitting in the museum collections, but no one's quite known what to do with it. So we restudied the skull. We figured out its relationships, and we've decided that it represents a new species not previously recognized. Its relationships in the past have been uncertain. It's been placed in Cretaceous. We think it's something distinct. It's closer to Gryposaurus, but distinct enough that we gave it its own genus. We named it Coahuilasaurus, and it shows some really extraordinary specializations of the beak. Why does this matter? Well, curiously, you might think that after more than 100 years of looking in North America, we'd found most of the dinosaurs in the Cretaceous, and we keep finding new ones. And a big part of the reason why is that there's different species in different areas. So historically, the United States and southern Canada have been very well worked. A lot less work has been done down in the south, especially down in Mexico. And we're finding species down there. And this has interesting implications for the evolution of dinosaurs, for the extinction of dinosaurs, and for understanding dinosaur diversity and kind of the diversity of everything. I'd argue that there's some really interesting regional patterns. So our story starts in Coahuila, a state in northern Mexico. And here, northern Mexico is covered by vast deserts, creosote bushes and cacti and dry plains stretch out as far as the eye can see. And it doesn't look like there's a lot here, but this type of thing, this is the sort of thing that makes the heart of the paleontologist leap. Why? Because erosion is our friend in paleontology, because erosion does this work of uncovering the rocks for us and uncovering the dinosaurs so we can walk along and find them. Plants are kind of your enemy as a paleontologist, because plants grow over things. They cover things up. They make soil. The roots bind the soil and cover the dinosaurs. You can't find anything. Places that don't have a lot of plants, like deserts, are great places to look for fossils. And there's a lot exposed out here. These rocks are laid down in the Cretaceous. There's things like mosasaurs, sharks, ammonites out there. And in the terrestrial sediments, there's dinosaurs. So the formation that's produced the most dinosaurs in Coahuila is a formation called the Cerro del Pueblo formation. Its latest Campanian in age. It's just near the very end of the Campanian, just before the Maastrichtian. And at the time, this was on the edge of the ocean. High volcanic activity is building a lot of these giant mountains under the oceans, and that shoves all the water up onto the continental plates and buries much of Mexico under the Gulf of Mexico. And so this was shoreline at the time. You're hundreds of kilometers from the ocean today, but at the time you could have stared out over the Gulf of Mexico. And this represents a coastal delta depositional system. And you have things like oysters there and plants growing in the bayous and swamps and river channels. And the Cerro del Pueblo formation, it dates to around 72.5 to 73 million years ago. We don't have any radiometric dates. This isn't 100% precise, but it's pretty good. We have information from ammonite biostratigraphy, from magnetostratigraphy, and strontium isotopes, all giving us this kind of 72.5 to 73 million years ago kind of zone. And it preserves a really interesting biota. It has a really diverse flora, a diverse fauna, and it seems to represent some type of tropical forest environment. Plants that we see there include the Ericaceae, those are the palms, things like modern palmettos, highly diverse in Mexico today, would have been quite diverse back then. We also see the Araceae, these are aroids, things like the philodendron, things like the Swiss cheese plant Monstera. These things lived in dinosaur times and were part of this flora. And also Musaceae, bananas. So imagine dinosaurs tramping through this tropical rainforest, and there's bananas, and there's things that look like, Monstera plants and palm trees. That's what this environment looks like. And it's quite distinct flora and a very distinct look from what you would see up in Alberta, where you have a lot more conifers at the time. The Cerro del Pueblo formation is younger than Dinosaur Park formation by, not a heck of a lot, by a couple million years, and also younger than the Kuiperowitz formation of Utah and the Kirtland formation of New Mexico. It is equivalent to the lowermost Horseshoe Canyon formation of Alberta, to the Drumheller member of the Horseshoe Canyon formation. So we can actually compare the dinosaurs of this formation to the ones up in Canada. They're basically the exact same age. They overlap in time. We can compare their faunas and see, are they similar? Are they different? And then start asking, well, what's going on here? What are the differences? And so the fauna that we see up in the Horseshoe Canyon Formation, equivalent to this would be stuff like Albertosaurus, the Tyrannosaur, Edmontosaurus, the duckbill dinosaur, one of the famous duckbill dinosaurs, and also this thing called Pachyrhinosaur, a ceratopsian. We have here, however, something rather distinct. We have actually a completely distinct fauna. We have species that are not seen in the Horseshoe Canyon Formation. So we don't see things like Pachyrhinosaurus, Anchiceratops, other things you get in the Horseshoe Canyon Formation. We see this Coahuilasaurus. It seems to be a distinct lineage. We have another animal in there that might be related to Utaceratops, some sort of a small chasmosaurine. We have distinct duckbills in there. We have Velafrons, a Lambeosaur. We have Platylophus, a Parasaurolophine. Sorry, that's very kind of a tongue twister there. Laterinus, and now we have this new Kritosaur. And there are no Kritosaurs known from the Horseshoe Canyon Formation. So it's a pretty diverse fauna. This is the complete fauna list. I'd love to put all these things in one little diagram, but it gets pretty busy and it's not very, scientifically it might work well. Aesthetically, it does not work well for these diagrams. But there's a lot of species here. And we're still exploring this. There are other things that remain to be described that represent new species. I strongly suspect that if we collected more dinosaurs, it's not even that well sampled. A lot of what we have is fairly fragmentary. I think we'd see even more species. So I suspect there's probably something like 5 or 6 different duckbill dinosaur species here, compared to maybe just a couple in the Horseshoe Canyon Formation of an equivalent age. So there's really, really high diversity here. It's pretty interesting. And curiously, nothing in that assemblage seems to be the same species as what we see up in Canada. And there's actually just like completely different lineages down in this Mexican fauna. So it's interesting. It's giving us a glimpse into a different part of North America at the end of the Campanian, and we're seeing distinct fauna there. One of the members of this fauna that's been kind of a bit of a puzzle, and people have been kind of kicking this thing around for a long time, not quite knowing what to do with it, is a duckbill dinosaur from a place called Presa San Antonio. This is the Presa San Antonio duckbill. And unfortunately, it's just part of a rostrum here. It's beautifully preserved material. It was preserved in sandstone. The block tumbled down the hill. They found the snout. They prepped it out. But the rest of the snout is either somewhere buried still in the hill or possibly weathered out before the snout has long since been destroyed. So there's this snout. And previous studies, I think around about, I want to say 2001 or something, Kirkland and colleagues described this and compared it to Kritosaurus. And it is quite similar to Kritosaurus. In the same paper, they discussed and described a distinct specimen. And actually, this was kind of the main focus of this specimen from a place called Sabinus. And this is sometimes called the Sabinosaur. It hasn't been named, but just kind of informally, it's the dinosaur from Sabinus, Sabinosaur. So the Sabinosaur is a pretty interesting animal. It's a very, very large duckbill. I think it's comparable in size or larger than Edmontosaurus. It's a very large animal, among the largest duckbills in North America. It's pretty well preserved. It's known from parts of the skull. It's got the maxilla, the upper jaw, the dentary or lower jaw. It's got some other skull bones in there, parts of the hind limbs, pelvis, etc. It's a pretty well-known animal. And in that paper, they threw out the idea that because these things were both, Saurolophine duckbills, known from about the same time, from northern Mexico, they're probably one species. And they kind of smashed these things together and made this reconstruction of Kritosaurus spa, including the nose of one duckbill and the back of the skull of the Sabinosaur. And Sabinosaurus and this Presa San Antonio specimen were supposed to be one animal. It turns out to be a little bit more complicated than that, because if you look at these animals and throw them into a phylogenetic analysis, that is, code up the various anatomical characters that distinguish these, throw them in, put them into a matrix, let the computer generate your evolutionary tree, it puts the two specimens in completely different parts of the duckbill tree. So one goes near Kritosaurus, kind of fitting this idea that we have something, if not Kritosaurus, related to it. The other specimen goes off near things like Saurolophus and Edmontosaurus, or potentially even in other parts of the tree. But no matter how you slice it, it doesn't come out with a nose. So they don't seem to represent the same thing. And then if you go back and look more closely at the anatomy of these animals, actually you start looking at it, they're not really as similar as was thought at first. So the Sabinosaur has a very long, low dentary, And in particular, the symphysis, that is the chin, is extremely elongate. It's quite shallow and it projects out at a low angle. So it's got a very long, low snout. The Presa San Antonio specimen has a much shorter, deeper dentary. The chin, the symphysis, is strongly downturned and it's deeper. And it has this distinct process on the underside. So it looks like these are in fact two separate things. Sabinosaur is its thing, the Cretaceous is its other thing. And that kind of raises the question, well, like, okay, what is the Cretaceous exactly? So I went to Mexico to see the Chicxulub crater, and I was visiting the university in Mexico City, and I figured, what the heck, let's go take a look at the specimen. And the process got into looking at it and trying to figure out what it was, and it seemed like the specimen needed a restudy to try and sort this out. And so, unfortunately, it's not super complete. It's just the snout, the premaxillary, it's got part of the maxillary, the dentaries, and the predentaries. This might not sound like a lot, but in fact, these are highly diagnostic elements in dinosaurs. If you think of modern birds, how do you diagnose them? I mean, differences in beak are important. Ravens have a deeper, longer beak than crows do. If you look at Galapagos finches, how do you tell them apart? They have different beak shapes because as evolution drives them apart, they specialize in different resources, the beaks evolve. And this is true of, well, birds are modern dinosaurs. This is true of extinct dinosaurs as well. They have distinct beaks. So the beak of a Torosaurus and the beak of a Triceratops are different. You can tell them apart that way. And even the different species of Triceratops have different beaks. So beaks evolve very, very rapidly. So despite not being a highly complete specimen, what I'm arguing is what we have there is in fact highly diagnostic and can help us nail down exactly where this thing fits in the evolutionary tree and what it's related to and figure out what's going on here. So what is going on here? So in studying this animal, yes, it does represent a Cretaceous, but it seems to be something distinct from Cretaceous itself. So if you look at the premaxilla, what you'll see is that the kind of the back of the jaw has this distinct upturn of the beak. And it forms a much lower angle there in Cretaceous. So it has just a different beak shape. So again, beaks are diagnostic. That's quite distinct. The lower jaw is also very, very distinct from Cretaceous. So Cretaceous has a longer, shallower symphysis. The symphysis is not as strongly downturned, and there's this big kind of process on the underside of the dentary, on the underside of the dentary symphysis under the chin, this kind of tab there or flange that you see in the Coahuila specimen that you don't see in Cretaceous. So it might be a Cretaceous, but it's not Cretaceous. So what is it? Well, we kind of looked around, compared it to all the different animals, and we went back and forth. And first, maybe it's related to Cretaceous, maybe it's related to this thing called Gryposaurus alcitae, which isn't a Gryposaurus. That's another problem. And finally, going back and forth, trying to code this up, arguing about this, trying and code all these characters and focusing on these little tiny details, we finally had on the idea that consensus that what it's related to is an animal called Gryposaurus monumentensis from Utah, from the Kuiperowitz Formation. So what are the features that pull it over near Gryposaurus monumentensis? This distinctive shape of the lower jaw. The chin, again, the dentary symphysis is strongly downturned. It's quite deep. It's got that tab on the underside. All these features are shared with monumentensis. Another feature that you see in our animal, not in Cretaceous, but in this animal, is that the tip of the beak, the predentary, is strongly upturned. It's kind of projecting more forward in Cretaceous. So in these features, this animal seems much more similar to monumentensis. The premaxilla, again, is more similar to monumentensis than it is to Cretaceous. So it's not a Cretaceous. It's related to Gryposaurus monumentensis. However, it shows a number of distinct features that show it is in fact not a monumentensis. So again, that kind of at the very back of the beak where the premaxilla turns up very sharply, that angle there is different than what you see in Gryposaurus. The nostril, that is the nares, is extended very, very far forward. So it has a very long, low nostril. Gryposaurus, the nostril is not as elongate and is kind of deeper dorsoventrally. So that's distinct. And these other features that it shares with Gryposaurus, it does share them, but they're kind of more extreme in the Mexican specimen. So the chin is deeper. It's deep in both, but it's deeper in the Mexican guy. The chin, that process on the underside, is a bit longer. The upturn of the predentary bone of the beak there is stronger. So in almost every respect, it's more advanced. It's undergone more evolution, become more specialized than monumentensis, which is not shocking. It's a younger animal. It's had a couple million more years to evolve, so it's picked up these additional specializations. It shows some really unique features. One of them is these conical processes on the premaxilla. And these are just bizarre to the point where previous studies have just misinterpreted what's going on here. So typically what you have in duckbill dinosaurs is these kind of little tooth-like processes, denticles they call them, that project down off basically the lip, off the margin of the beak. And Griposaurus alcitae shows that, for example, and it was assumed, oh, it kind of looks like alcitae in that. And no, that's different. So the little denticles on kind of the lip, it's got those, and they're really, really tiny. You almost can't see them. They're so highly reduced. And the big processes sticking down are not on the edge of the beak. They're on the underside of the beak. They're on the palate. So basically, the roof of the mouth has these huge spikes projecting downwards, which is just really, really bizarre. And here it is, kind of in ventral view. And these spike-like processes are kind of actually a bit keeled when you see them in ventral view. They project really far downward, and they're born on this long horseshoe-shaped ridge of bone. And this entire thing projects down below the margin of the beak. So the palate is actually kind of inverted and projects downwards with this horseshoe-shaped ridge. And then on the front end of it, it has 6 of these big denticle tooth-like structures. And what are these things? Well, if you look at turtles, what you'll see sometimes is herbivorous turtles will have like these little kind of elaborations of the beak, and they're associated with these crazy elaborations of the keratin there's the bony part of the beak, and then there's the keratin sheath, the proteinaceous part of the beak that goes over the bone. And we see these little bumps, they're associated with elaborations of that keratin part of the beak. So the keratin, what we call the rhamphotheca, I didn't know why you need to know that, it's kind of a cool word. The rhamphotheca of this thing would have been really elaborate and borne these huge, spikes or keels or whatever projecting down off the roof of the mouth. And these structures are presumably some sort of adaptation for chewing. They would have kind of pressed against the predentary bone and kind of helped it shear plants. So there's some sort of weird feeding adaptation. I haven't really seen anything like this in duckbills before. Correct me if I'm wrong, I guess. But none of the duckbills I've looked at have anything like this. The closest analogy I can think of are the oviraptorosaurs. And oviraptorosaurs in things like Citipati have this downwardly projecting palate. They have ridges on that palate. And the oviraptorosaurs seem to be specialized for processing very, very tough vegetation. They live out in the deserts, the dune fields in Mongolia, and they're chewing really tough stuff. And so maybe this duckbill has some sort of really specialized diet, presumably eating really tough stuff, and it's just kind of cropping very resistant plant matter with these big tooth-like structures. Cycads, tree ferns, palms, they get a lot of palm fossils down there. Maybe that's what's going on. Speculative, I admit, but I don't have a better idea. But it's doing something really, really weird. It just has this incredibly bizarre beak, which is pretty cool. Throwing this thing into a matrix and doing a phylogeny, running the analysis, we get this thing as being most closer to Griposaurus monumentensis, which again is basically what we expect on the basis of anatomy, and not near Cretaceous. So it's not a Cretaceous, it's something distinct. It's kind of off doing its own thing. We ended up naming this thing Coahuilasaurus, after the state of Coahuila. The beak just seems so weird that seemed to justify giving it a distinct genus. Could it have been a different species of Griposaurus? Yeah, probably. These things are a bit in the eye of the beholder. Why not name it Griposaurus? Well, I kind of just don't like the name. Griposaurus, Griposaurus, it sounds like it's griping, like, oh my God, my beak is killing me. So I kind of just didn't like the name. I admit that's a bit arbitrary. The other thing is that I just thought it'd be kind of cool to, celebrate Mexico's dinosaurs. Mexico has some really neat dinosaurs that have come out over the years. It has more stuff that is awaiting discovery, and it has more things that need to be dug up. And I thought giving it the name of the state of Coahuila, maybe it'd get people enthusiastic about doing more research on these dinosaurs and learning about them and knowing about them. It just seemed like a cool thing to do. Is this an arbitrary, unscientific reason for establishing a new genus? Well, yeah. The thing about genera is that they are a bit arbitrary. They're human constructs. There's no scientific way to say it. Well, Brontosaurus is not distinct enough to be a different genus from Apatosaurus, so it's Apatosaurus excelsus, not Brontosaurus excelsus. Someone else can look at it, and I have, and said, well, I think they're pretty different. I think it should be a different genus. There's no real scientific way to decide that. It's a judgment call. It's arbitrary. The genus is a human construct. And so it ultimately does come down to matters of taste. My taste is, hey, let's make it a new genus. I think it sounds kind of cool. I think Mexican dinosaurs are cool. I think they need more credit. So That was my rationale. Is it scientific? No. But hey, any other rationale is also unscientific. So that's what we went with. So why does this matter, aside from getting to name a new dinosaur species? Which, hey, that matters. That's always fun. I mean, that's many kids' dreams. That was kind of my dream. So why does it matter, though, aside from getting one more dinosaur? We already have hundreds of these things. What we're seeing here, this is kind of one more data point that kind of tells us what we've been seeing elsewhere, which is that southern dinosaurs really are different. It's been proposed that these reflect differences in age. I don't think that's what's going on here, as we get a better understanding both of what dinosaurs live where and the age of these rocks. What we're seeing is different species in the south from different species in the north. So previously, everything that came out of Coahuila so far, out of the Cerro del Pueblo formation, is distinct from what we see up in the Horseshoe Canyon formation. Here we have another species, clearly distinct, and it's also distinct from the dinosaurs we see further north. It seems to be a distinct lineage from the Cretaceous we see in Dinosaur Park, for example. So again, people have proposed that what we're seeing when we get different dinosaurs is differences in age. You could imagine that you've got one widespread dinosaur fauna, right? Across North America, all the dinosaurs are the same, but they evolve rapidly. So every 500,000 years you get different species. If you sample in New Mexico and then Canada, and you're off by 500,000 years, you could have, you'd see different species, but it's reflecting evolution, not endemism, not different species in different areas. So this is plausible, but as we've gotten more information, it seems like that's not what's going on. Because we've got these radiometric dates, we do uranium dating on the ash beds from these various deposits, from the Dinosaur Park formation and from the Horseshoe Canyon formation, from the Two Medicine formation in Montana, the Judith River formation on Montana, from Kaiparowitz in Utah, and from the Kirtland formation in New Mexico, and then we have other information to kind of correlate the Coahuila beds. These things are basically all the same age, except for Horseshoe Canyon and Coahuila, which are a bit younger, but they correlate with each other. So the rocks are the same age. Geology might seem kind of tedious and stuff, but it actually gets really important and really fascinating when you dig into it, because you want to know exactly how old everything is to figure out these problems. And the ages are the same for these different assemblages. We can compare like to like, correct for time, and say, for a given time, do we see the same dinosaurs everywhere? And the answer is no. We see different species everywhere we look. And this is really interesting for understanding dinosaur evolution, dinosaur diversity. So the dinosaurs of the south are diverse and different. We have this distinct dinosaur fauna in Coahuila. We have Coahuilaceratops, we have Velafrons, Platylophus, Laterinus, Parazinosaurus, and now we have Coahuilasaurus. There is a lot of diversity down south. It's not even that extensively studied. There's a lot more waiting to be seen down there. And it's all different stuff. We're finding new things. So if you want to find new dinosaurs, go look somewhere else. Go look in different formation. You're going to start finding new species very, very quickly. And not just new species, we are seeing entire branches of the dinosaurian family tree that exist down south but not up north. So for example, we have a primitive member of Tyrannosaurus down New Mexico in the McRae group that we do not see further up north. So we have these giant, robust Tyrannosaurs living down the south but not up north. In the Kirtland Formation, we have this thing called Titanoceratops. It's the oldest known member of the Triceratopsinae, that is, Triceratops, Torosaurus, and their relatives. It's kind of like a Torosaurus or Triceratops, but more primitive. Could conceivably be the direct ancestor. This lineage is down south in New Mexico. We don't see it in equivalent rocks up further north in Utah or in Dinosaur Park in Alberta. So we have this distinct lineage, these giant horned dinosaurs that exist in the south, but not up in the north. And then we also have this issue where the Cretaceous initially are kind of found everywhere, but by the end of the Campanian period, they're only found down south. So we have a lineage of dinosaurs that's exclusively found in the southwest. Not just distinct species, distinct clades are found in the southwest. So this gets to another issue, is different extinction patterns. So if you look at the Gryposaurs, they show regional extinction. They get as far north as Canada and Alberta in the mid-Campanian Dinosaur Park Formation. You move up into the Horseshoe Canyon Formation, the very end of the Campanian, and they're gone. They hang on further south. We have our species Coahuilasaurus in Coahuila into the late Campanian, and a few of these guys seem to go actually up into the late Maastrichtian. So we have some of them in Texas, We have there's a specimen from New Mexico, some sort of very large kritosauр, and we have one in Utah, but they're not found further north. You don't get them in the Hell Creek Formation. So we're seeing regional extinction. This lineage goes out in the north, but persists in the south. Okay, well, that's just one group, right? But other groups do the same thing. So Parasaurolophus, these Parasaurolophines with the weird kind of like, the tube crests. Parasaurolophus is there in the mid-Campanian around 75 million years ago in Alberta. It goes extinct. You do not see that lineage up in the Horseshoe Canyon Formation, and that lineage just hangs on to the very end of the Campanian in the Cerro del Pueblo Formation. Could it go further up in the Maastrichtian in Texas or New Mexico, which I haven't found yet? Conceivably, could go extinct, but it survives at least a little bit longer in the south than in the north. And the other group that does this are the lambeosaurs. So lambeosaurs survive into, I think, maybe the mid or kind of early late Maastrichtian in Canada, things like Hipparchosaurus. Then they go extinct. And you don't see them in the Hell Creek Formation. So a lot of people have kind of seized on this as some sort of evidence of dinosaur decline. See the lambeosaurs, they used to be diverse. They're gone at the end. They're not gone. Lambeosaurins persist in New Mexico into the late Maastrichtian. And they're known from like one or two bones, but they're clearly there. So we have this interesting pattern where you're seeing groups go out up north. And you might look at this and say, look, wow, dinosaurs are experiencing some major crisis. But a lot of these things are hanging out further south. And it may be that as things got very cold in the Maastrichtian, you have this cooling trend, it's hitting a lot high latitudes harder. They're much more seasonal, will be affected by cooling a lot more. And these things are hanging out low latitudes. So this has important implications for understanding dinosaur diversity in the final few million years of the Cretaceous. I think to really understand this, we can't put everything on Alberta and Montana. We need to know what's going on in the south. And right now we can't really do that very well. We need better sampling from the Javelina Formation in Texas. And man, if you could find some Maastrichtian dinosaurs late Maastrichtian dinosaurs in Mexico, that'd be amazing. So I think we need to understand more about what's going on down there. So you have these different evolutionary patterns. We have certain lineages emerge in the south and move up north. And that's things like the Triceratopsins, Tyrannosaurus. These are southern groups that move north. In other cases, we have these groups that are once widespread. They go extinct in the north and persist in the south. And so there's just kind of different evolutionary dynamics going on in these southern faunas. So diversity patterns. What does this mean for diversity? You might kind of assume that these are giant animals. They kind of be found everywhere. And we see that to a degree with modern animals, right? So you have wolves are geographically or historically quite widespread. They went from Europe and Asia into North America. I think they even got into North Africa. You have, brown bears are very widely distributed. People might tend to assume that dinosaurs like Triceratops and Torosaurus were just very widely distributed. And that's, in fact, not the case. Dinosaurs tend to have very small geographic ranges. It's not entirely clear why. Part of the problem might be that the modern interval, the Holocene, it's a post-extinction interval. We had these megafaunal extinctions. The hunter-gatherers wiped out the big game, there's this major extinction event, and the survivors may have become more widespread in the aftermath. So it might be that we're seeing kind of some weird diversity patterns. That's entirely possible. It's also possible that these high sea levels, there's a lot more isolation of the continents, and so things just couldn't spread out as much. But even accounting for this, within a continent, these tyrannosaurs are not even that widespread. Tyrannosaurus macraensis is down in the south, but not up in the north. The kritosaurs are in the south towards the end of the Cretaceous, but they're not up in the north. We have distinct species of kritosaurus in the north and the south, distinct lineages. So there's different things going on in different areas. So these dinosaurs seem to have very, very small geographic ranges within continents. It's not just that the continents are isolated by oceans. Even inside the continent, they didn't move very far. Why is that? I don't know. Is it possible there's just something different with dinosaur biology and they something about how they breed and reproduce and evolve favors rapid speciation? I think that's entirely possible. I mean, some groups, snakes seem to have very high speciation rates compared to other lizards. Maybe dinosaurs, something about them promotes speciation compared to mammals. I have no idea. Could it be the climate, that something different is going on? That maybe with warmer climates you get more species, more endemism? Possible. Is it possible the ice ages with the ice sheets moving down and then back up north? That makes it difficult to build up high levels of diversity and with in small areas. Things just have to have large geographic ranges or they go extinct otherwise. Maybe, I don't know. But it does seem like there's something different going on here where you have these very small geographic ranges for big animals. This means there are a lot of dinosaurs out there waiting to be found. And I think this is one of several reasons why dinosaur diversity has been underestimated. So we have high regional diversity, different dinosaurs in Alberta, Utah, New Mexico, and Mexico. That's one reason there's a lot of dinosaurs. Another reason is just within ecosystems, you have a lot of dinosaurs. You know, the Cerro Pueblo Formation in Mexico might have 6 duckbills. It's got a lot of species in there. So dinosaurs have a lot of species in one place. They move over, you get a bunch more. And then we have very rapid evolution. They seem to evolve very rapidly. Their species last maybe 1 million years, 500,000 years. So you have this rapid turnover. So I suspect there were probably hundreds of thousands of dinosaur species over the course of the Mesozoic. A lot of species. There's a lot more to find out there. We're continuing to find new dinosaurs. Some of this is just as we sample more intensively in known formations, we pick up rare species. So you find 100 dinosaurs, you find the common things, but not the rare ones. You take about 1,000 dinosaurs, you start to find the rare guys. That's one reason we find more species. And the Cerro Pueblo Formation is not well studied comparatively to something like the Hell Creek Formation. So there's probably a lot of rare stuff in there waiting to be found. And part of us, we're getting better at recognizing them. You'd like to think there's been progress in paleontology, that we're better at recognizing species now than we were, say, 100 years ago or back in the 1800s when Barsh and Cope were working. So as you get better at recognizing them, maybe you start recognizing more species. I think that's entirely possible. I think there's a lot more to find in general, and in particular in Mexico. We need further exploration. We need more collecting in Mexico. We need to study what we already have and restudy some of this stuff and try and figure out what we have. So in this particular case, I love to do some field work in Mexico, hoping to go out there. But in this particular case, just went to the museum and kind of took a look at what this thing was and tried to figure it out. We'd been kind of arguing about this for 20 years. I said, well, let's try and solve it. And I'd like to think, did. So we kind of need to do all these things. Collect more dinosaurs, dig them up, prepare them, describe them, reinterpret them. And all of these things are necessary to give us a fuller picture of dinosaur diversity. So studying diversity. I keep saying, like I've said in this talk and in the other ones, I keep saying there's more species than we think. Why do I keep repeating that? Well, because it's true and it's important. I think it's an important thing that we need to emphasize. And I think we need to, if we want to get evolution right, we got the species right. A lot of things ride on identifying species right. So this is kind of the foundation on which all these evolutionary trees are generated, understanding patterns of diversity and extinction. And I think to get it right, we got to get the species right. And we still know remarkably little about what existed, but by collecting more and redescribing, we get a little bit closer. And this has big implications for understanding evolution, for extinction, and we need to keep studying dinosaurs and slowly getting a more complete picture of what's out there. Last of all, duckbill dinosaurs. I kind of got sucked into duckbill dinosaurs. They were not like the thing I really wanted to study when I was a student. I kind of got roped into them after a duckbill dinosaur turned up in Africa, Ajnabia, and then I kind of got interested in them. And duckbill dinosaurs are kind of, some people might say they're kind of the boring dinosaurs. They're the cows of the Cretaceous. They're sort of big, non-threatening herbivores. And some of them have the cool casques. Like, so you have the lambeosaurs have the crests, for example. And the kritosaurs don't have a lot going on in that department. So if you might think duckbills are boring, but kritosaurs like the boring duckbills. And so they're kind of like the least exciting ones in a way. But they're actually, you dig in there, actually, they're pretty cool. There's a lot of species of them. I think there's something like, trying to count it up, there's something like 13 or 14 species all told, some of which will remain to be described and studied. So they're a major chunk of the duckbill diversity. And they show some interesting patterns. Again, that's kind of regional extinction. They're widespread. They become more narrowly distributed towards the end of the Maastrichtian. Another cool thing is one lineage of the Cretaceous gets into South America and stages this major adaptive radiation. So they're kind of a cool group. And duckbills, tyrannosaurs are cool, but they're not as well known. They're a lot rarer, being carnivores in the fossil record. Duckbills, they're just a lot more species, a lot more specimens. So if you want to build some great, big, elaborate evolutionary tree and look at these patterns of diversification, extinction, biogeography, the duckbills are kind of a better group to look at, and it kind of just helps give you a complementary picture. If you're seeing similar patterns and dynamics in your tyrannosaurs, your duckbills, the ceratopsians, looking across the evolutionary tree, I think it gives you a fuller picture. So it's been kind of interesting to dive into duckbills and realize there's a lot going on there I really didn't appreciate. And then last of all, why work on a Mexican duckbill? Well, it's just been fun to work in Mexico. It's been great collaborating with people. It's been great visiting, people hosting me, showing me around the collections. I mean, obviously the food is fantastic, and I hope I get a chance to do more work on Mexican dinosaurs in the future. So, okay, so that concludes our lecture. Thank you guys for listening. I will probably be back with more of these in the future because, well, new dinosaurs keep coming up. People keep digging up new ones. We keep finding new ones in collections. In a way, it's kind of great, job security. But some days it feels it's tough to keep up, Find them faster than you can describe them. So, I don't know, but I guess it's a good problem to have. So anyway, thank you guys for listening.